You want to unmute too. Yeah. All right. You're good to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to the National Engineering Month. We're just going to get started really quickly. We have Blue Waters online. She's just going to give us a land acknowledgement. We're just going to get the event started right away then. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. We want to acknowledge that we're on the territories of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and all those that made this space their home. For each and every one of us, the land acknowledgement is something that we need to do each and every day to give thanks for the space in which we now live, where we work, where we play, where we enjoy our lives. Noting that all those that came before us, all those ancestors who took care of this land to make sure that we had a safe space to come to. So today we give thanks for all of creation, everything that we have, especially the water and the air. And each and every one of us, each and every day, we generally say thank you that we're here for another day. Thank you that we woke up this morning and help us to have a beautiful day and live as a good human being. Land acknowledgements are something that you personalize yourself in the spaces where you are giving thanks, where you are acknowledging where you're on. And it can be very different for each person. But the important thing is to always acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land and that we are all guests here. And so as a guest, we have responsibilities to help take care of the land as it was done many years before, since the beginning of time. So I just wanted to share that with you today and hope that we have a really good event. I know that we're going to be talking about engineering, and with that engineering, it comes taking care of the land. And so as we do this engineering work, to always be mindful of everything that we do to the land. If we help the land helps us. If we harm the land, we harm it not only for us, but for everyone. So in engineering, to always be mindful. What are we doing today and how will it affect those generations coming? Sometimes we only look to the current on how we can benefit from what it is that we're doing. But always bear in mind that, in 5 or 10 years, how will that land look from the time we start working with it, from the time we start changing it? What we figure is making it a better space. Will it be better? If there's any accidents that happen on that land, such as hydraulic hoses leaking or oil coming out, gasoline, are we mindful that, we're not poisoning the waters as those chemicals and those substances leak onto the land, and then when it rains, they go to our waterways and run off. So it's always important to make sure that we're taking care of that land because it takes care of us. It doesn't need us. It can exist long without us, but we need it. We need it to live and to work, to raise our families, to be with our communities, to enjoy our lives, to make sure that we always have clean water to drink, that we always have access to safe housing, transportation. Modern technology is a wonderful, wonderful invention. However, we have to make sure we're using it for the good. As we know, with everything we do as a human being, sometimes we can not see everything clearly or not plan for years to come. So please be mindful as you're doing your work throughout your careers to always make that commitment to take care of the land, because it's not only for us right now, but it's for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, to make sure they have space so that they can enjoy all the same resources that we enjoy, all that beautiful environmental spaces that we can go to play and to contemplate what it is we're doing with our lives, to have spaces where we can plant and grow our own food, to have spaces where we can commute with each other in ways that we're not interfering with anything, building our communities, because some of us come from places far away. So rebuilding those communities and sharing space with new people. So I just wanted to leave you with that. And as you move forward with your journeys, make that land acknowledgement personal to you. What are you going to do to make this space a better place? What are you going to do moving forward with your journey? And how are you going to acknowledge all those that took care of these spaces so that we could arrive here and work and live on to. So I want to thank the engineering for inviting me here today. It's been a long drive for me. I've traveled from Toronto to Thunder Bay and now just drove to Dryden. So it's been a long day, but I made it so I could give you this very important message. Please take care of the land and all of creation so that all of us can have a beautiful place to live. Chi miigwech. Hi, hi.
Thank you, Blue, for all your wise words. I do agree personally. As we move forward, making our land acknowledgement more personal will not only give meaning to what you're doing, but also give meaning to the future generations that are going to be using that land. So thank you again, Blue, for your kind words.
You're welcome.
So, thank you. Okay, so up next, we have Brendan Heber. Just to quickly, 1 second. So Brendan Heber is the founder at Boreal Greens. He holds a BSc degree in environmental science and biology and sustainable business management certificate from McMaster University and Seneca College. Please give it a round of applause to Brendan Heber. Thank you.
Share the screen.
Perfect. Well, Andrew gets things set up. Hi, everybody. My name is Brandon. We got a couple questions for everybody here. You can generously raise your hand as participation. Who here grows food in a garden? Indoors, outdoors? Quite a few hands? No, nobody at this table. Second question. How many of you eat food? That's great, right? So I think it comes back to thanking the farmer and thinking about ways that we can contribute to our food system, because at the end of the day, we're all consumers. We need food, water, shelter, and air for our nourishment. And so it's a question I usually like to ask, except it's usually a lot of students in the from the city of Toronto, and I ask them, has anybody ever thought about farming or agriculture as a career? Not a single person puts their hand up, because when you're from the city, you really never think about what agriculture is. You really are disattached or detached from the ag value chain. And so you never think about the amazing opportunities that there are in agriculture. And so what my job is, here, and I hope to provide a little bit of inspiration for my story, how I became born and raised from the city of Toronto, became what I call a farmer of the future, and had quite a journey as an entrepreneur. And becoming more involved in the food system here in Ontario and actually around the world. And the more and more I got involved, the more amazed I was at the people that are in the ag space, agri-food, and obviously in light of what we're seeing right now and hearing on the news with the development of our Greenland, which is one of the most prosperous areas for agriculture in Ontario being developed, and looking at continuous development. It's very important for us to think about how can we balance the needs of a city, a metropolitan, a region that needs to grow with the needs of production for that area. Because if we continue to keep paving over farmland with concrete, we're going to have problems. And so hopefully I can shed light on a couple of cool things and cool projects that are helping to, shift the game. And there's a little bit of engineering, there's a little bit of science, and I try to be a little bit funny sometimes, although it can be very dry humor. So about me, my name is Brandon. Again, here's the many faces of Brandon. I founded what I think is the first vertical farm in Toronto in 2015. I started off my endeavors in business after building a little home growing unit at my parents' house. They had a little solarium, and being a DIY person, I took some PVC pipes, crafted into these vertical towers that you can see behind me in that middle picture, and then eventually met somebody who was crazy enough as me to get into business after being part of the Seneca Sustainable Business Management Program to found a company called Ripple Farms. That company went on to be the top social enterprise startup of the year in 2018, after having educated over 3,000 students, high school students more specifically, around urban agriculture, indoor agriculture, as well as tying into the different social programs and food systems, food groups and networking organizations in and around the city of Toronto. In partnership with Seneca College, we hosted the first vertical farming boot camp in Canada. and hope to continue that and carry that out forward into the next coming years. I represented Canada as a youth ambassador for agriculture twice in Brazil and in Brussels, working with young agricultural entrepreneurs and activists from around the world. And then I was very fortunate to be awarded, recognized as one of Canada's 30 under 30 in 2021 for being a sustainability trailblazer. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that journey. As I mentioned, I did go to Seneca, but before that, I went to York University for a year, Faculty of Environmental Studies. I went to McMaster for 5 years and picked up my science, where I specialized in geology and soil science. Came to Seneca because I wanted to be involved a little bit more in the business space and understand how I could take these crazy environmental ideas and maybe get into this thing, this business thing, saw a lot of Dragon's Den. And then it wasn't until we actually got doing it is where everything changed. And so after my time at Seneca, had a little bit of time to figure things out, met with a gentleman who was my business partner, as I mentioned, and we founded Ripple Farms in 2016. It was an amazing journey in terms of what happened in Ripple Farms, but unfortunately that story came to a close when you realize the harsh world of business leads you to people who have other interests and affected us monetarily right before COVID, unfortunately led to the collapse of that business. I wanted to stay very true and passionate to what I love doing, which is working with people in the agricultural space. So I parted with ways with my business partner, stayed as a consultant, built 2 different vertical farming systems and trained people, Indigenous communities up on Manitoulin Island to empower them how to grow their own food using new technology that is in the controlled environment agriculture realm for their wintertime crop cultivation. And then in 2021, founded Boreal Greens Co. And so currently my new venture is Boreal Greens Co. My business partner is Amos. He's in the room sitting over there. And, together what we're trying to do is develop a food and farming infrastructure company that looks at different types of solutions of how we can be growing food in urban areas, in your backyard, in your kitchen, in your basement, or in new community developments. And so that's the whole big picture of my journey in life. And so that line was very straight, as is the one here, which is your plan. Your plan is I'm going to do this and go A to B. Well, the life of an entrepreneur is actually that bottom thing, which is a total obstacle course of reality checks and life lessons and hardships. And through those hardships, you actually put yourself into uncomfortable situations. By being in uncomfortable situations is how I've evolved. And so I'd love to go through my up and down, high and low journey, because the linear journey started with this. It's called the business model canvas, worked on with Seneca Helix here, and it helps to put some business ideas into categories and buckets of how you're going to formulate something. We said, well, we want to feed people. We want to do this crazy thing. We want to do with the fish. We want to do aquaponics, and aquaponics is you're raising fish and turning the fish poop into natural nutrients for the plants. And then we're going to pump it over into this greenhouse and do this and do that. And so we're like, okay, this is all great. How are we going to afford $5 million of a 1 acre piece of land in the city of Toronto? This is virtually impossible as a startup. And so, well, how that ended up happening is this was the first vertical farm that we built in the city of Toronto. It literally started on a piece of paper, graph paper for me, sketched it out. And then again, we built this in 2015 at the Evergreen Brickworks. And so this was a first urban farming unit, we called it, because it was a 20-foot shipping container that, as I mentioned, we had 350 pounds of fish in the container with a custom fabricated greenhouse on the top. We're able to leverage that container because it wasn't producing enough, because to grow, a $2 head of lettuce takes a lot to try to pay a normal salary in a space that's only 180 square feet, 160 square feet. But we were able to leverage it for the teaching and training and experiential education. So again, as I mentioned, we taught over 3,000 high school students, as well as some young professionals, work with different community groups to empower them in this new type of agriculture, how to grow food in the city. We were doing some really cool crafts, arts and crafts tied in with science, technology, engineering, and math. And obviously we've got some of these other new vertical farming, technology, growing technology. As the journey continues, we built our second farm here at Seneca College at this campus. And we actually hosted here in one of the innovation spaces, the first vertical farming boot camp of its kind in Canada. We had 12 participants in there, and we were talking to people who are homeowners, work with organizations, and people who are just generally interested in how can we grow food and become more food secure. And obviously a major piece of that is coming with the science, the technology, and the engineering, essentially, that brings both of those pieces together. So it's amazing to have Seneca as a platform and a place where we could again demonstrate the technology. We're growing food, and we're had some food in the student salad bar for a period of time. Worked very well with Paula, and now it's formed the Sustainable Seneca team. But unfortunately, COVID had another damper with that project, where you're under-resourced, there's nobody on campus. And so I believe Seneca was growing a bunch of greens and some herbs and actually donating it to the local food banks, which I think was an amazing initiative. Some of the things that happened inside of the farm here is we were using it as an applied research and innovation space. And so obviously it comes with, okay, we're going to grow food in this steel box with fish poo. How much are we yielding on these plants? What are the genetics of the plants? What are these new fancy LED lights and things I'll get into a little bit later? But as you can see, the interesting thing on the right side here is we've got a couple of pictures where these two heads of lettuce are the exact same age, the exact same seed, in the exact same environment with a different LED light. And so the one on the right weighed 42 grams, the one on the left weighed 97 grams, completely different color, texture, taste, physiology, and nutrient content, which is very interesting. The same as the kale that is on the top was actually grown under a different LED light, because as we started to get into indoor agriculture, we're evolving this idea of what do we take for granted from the sun, and what is a plant actually utilizing as its energy to grow as vigorous as it can. So some of those, again, applied research projects were had here and continued into some other interesting intellectual property. As I mentioned, I'm a bit of a teacher and a trainer. And I love to do it because it's what my passion is, showing people different forms of agriculture, being able to share my knowledge with the hope that I can inspire people, maybe teach them how to feed themselves if things happen or our borders close or whatever might happen in the future. And it goes anywhere from the two pictures here on the left are actually up in Sheshagwaning on Manitoulin Island, where we took an underutilized room and built this vertical farm and taught the community how to grow food for themselves in the winter. And then use it to start their seeds for this the summer season, which was very exciting. And the unit that's in the middle there was actually a teaching tool, which was a small scale aquaponics system where we were actually able to get it into a couple of high schools and teach, again, high school students how to start understanding what this hydroponic thing was, the aquaponics tying into biology, green industries, chemistry, and obviously having food to eat, which was exciting for them. These are the two high schools that we worked in. One was in Burlington, another one was in Guelph. And again, we're watching schools and young people become more and more interested in agriculture. So one was in a greenhouse, one was in a basement, different types of technologies, different types of outputs and inputs. But again, an amazing experience when you're able to connect people back to how they can grow food for themselves. And as you probably hear across the news, there's lots of exciting things happening in the world of vertical farming, and we're basically having big, we'll say, factory farms with robots that are growing our food, which to one extent I believe is great and exciting, but it also sort of takes away the human element and being more connected to your soil and plants, which is why I'm a big proponent of these sort of less intensive, more operationally efficient means of growing, which involves obviously human labor. This is a super cool project that we did in Thornhill with a community group called Danny, and they work with people who have physical and mental disabilities and challenges and barriers to the workplace. We worked with them in a greenhouse project, set up a microgreen business with the potential to reap over $110,000 in revenues a year, and then taught their team of 12 people how to actually start up, run the greenhouse, manage sales, and basically do everything end to end. And it was an amazing opportunity to watch how we could use food and farming as a tool to impact communities, especially marginalized communities or those with barriers, where they can actually sustain for themselves, have simple, functional, and routine roles, but then have a huge amount of impact in terms of what they produce for the communities. Another cool project, again, is how I try to have food, changing the way we see systems, is we partnered with a private business. They had some space on their property. We built a 2,000 square foot drip irrigated sort of automated market little farm, and we were able to donate over 350 pounds of food to the Mississauga Food Bank just by having somebody who is genuine enough to allow us to have some space. And so you can see this a little bit before, after, and then some smiling faces when we were able to donate probably the healthiest food the food bank receives, because you realize the food banks actually get a lot of canned food that actually isn't very healthy. So it kind of perpetuates an unfortunate cycle. A couple more pictures of how, perhaps inspirational is how do you take an idea or a dream or a vision and turn it into reality. And for me, it's been taking pictures and later been taking, renderings and saying, this is what I want to create. This is what I think I want to create. And now I have to manifest it into the reality of this world. And so, on the left, you'll see this is a vertical farm that I started up Boreal Greens with in Markham. Again, starts with a picture, an idea, then building the materials together and the foundations of all of these things, the foundations in construction, the foundations in plumbing, the foundations and then in crop production. And so all those things create a great basis for again, evolving. The thing on the right is, or on the right side of the screen is a really cool thing. If anybody ever goes to the CNE or the exhibition, we have an active booth in the farm building, right at the front of the farm building, engaged with over 250,000 people every single year, who all are interested in how do we grow fish in these plastic tanks and not lakes, and how are these lakes growing these plants, and how is it all working? And it's an amazing experience again to showcase a different form of agriculture. Along the way of some other neat, another neat little storytelling pieces. As you go through this journey, as I said, it's not linear, but we got into vertical farming. We started feeding people. We had an opportunity to become plastics manufacturers and just sell a plastic tower. We didn't want to do that because we knew food is important. We wanted to feed people in a different way and stay true as a farming business. Well, the second finding was that we realized that there's certain microbes that are beneficial microbes that actually enhance your crop's ability to be preventative for disease prevention, drought mitigation and drought resilience, as well as increasing productivity. So we actually got a $400,000 grant to do private research on different microbes or beneficial bacteria that would actually enhance our crop growth. And so these are just some pictures of collaboration with the University of Toronto, where we're actually able to get two different products that came out that were high yielding, and one was nitrogen sequestering, which is very interesting for us. So again, a little nerdy bit for me. And then the current journey in terms of, that's a sort of a hybrid journey of past company consulting in the present. And this is a slide that really reflects the present. As you can see in our table over here, we've got local greens. We don't have our microgreens in here, but we also have mushrooms. So we've started to advance into different forms of indoor agriculture. We support a number of different projects. And as I mentioned, my business partner, Amos here, we try to have smiles on our faces as often as we can. Usually when we're out in the soil, we have smiles on our faces. And so one of the things that's interesting, and I'm going to talk really quickly here about it, is we started growing mushrooms because lion's mane mushrooms are extremely beneficial for people's cognitive, functioning. And we thought, well, how cool would it be if we started to grow food that's now enhancing people's neurological pathways to help them also deal with stress, to help them be better functioning sort of on the ball. Well, that's something great, that an entrepreneur would love. It's a little bit of magic sauce. So we started experimenting, growing lion's mane, taking lion's mane powder, realized again that the benefits are amazing. And so we're actually scaling up our business in both mushroom production, microgreen production, and as a platform for teaching and training, which is what this slide is about. And I get ahead of myself. So we sort of have Boreal Greens or Boreal Agri Innovation. There's three pillars to the company. We do gourmet products. We have our expertise, which is our consulting domain. And then we have our innovation, which is our sort of modular farming kits, home grow kits, and some other things that we're working on. And so again, it's part of a bigger vision of what and why I'm here, because I want to create a company that's agriculture as a platform. Agriculture is a platform for transformation and change. And it obviously starts with people like you who are able to sit here, listen, hopefully gain a little bit from me, but then also think that when you buy food, that dollar is purchasing power. That purchasing power can either go to support a conglomerate and a corporation that pays people from Mexico no money, ships it on a truck for hundreds or thousands of miles, and then sells it to you as cheap as possible, versus spending $1 at a farmer's market that goes right to the local person. You speak to the person whose hands in the soil, you keep money in the local economy instead of funneling it into other corporate vehicles. So again, the overall thing is, know where your food comes from, obviously what it is, and then, be willing to shift your purchasing power to perhaps a more local solution. So that's a little bit, sorry, of my journey, and hopefully you found it interesting, understanding that obviously I talk very quickly. But the Canadian agri-food sector, some key stats here is it employs 2.1 million people, provides 1 in 9 jobs in Canada, generates $134.9 billion towards our GDP. Crop production alone generates $26.3 billion, and Ontario is only producing, although it's a relatively big number, only producing about $2 billion in vegetables. So those are all great facts as to how big this industry is. If you look across the agri-food value chain, you can kind of see anything from a seed, provider from seed, input, fertilizer, to the grower, processor, distributor, retail, and then consumer. So it's this whole value chain of how we actually go from a seed to a product that's in a package at the grocery store, at the farmer's market, to in your fridge. And then obviously the food waste cycle happens after that. But the two things I'd like to sort of highlight here is that in Canada and in Ontario specifically, 90% of our leafy greens are imported, mostly from California and from Arizona, that are used migrant workers, super cheap, lots of pesticides, terrible working conditions. And this is how our system is working. And Canada actually buys B grade lettuce because the Americans satisfy their own market first because they make more money. Then they ship us the B grade product and we think it's our A grade product. So when you look at how COVID impacted supply chain and you think about how Ontario has almost $12 billion food deficit, we're extremely vulnerable here if we have a problem with our borders, if we have climate change problems, or we have other political unrest. So it really goes back to thinking, okay, we're living in a system right now that's perpetuating instability. It could take one thing for this to completely go off the tracks. And so the best you can do is to educate yourself as to how can I grow stuff myself, even in my backyard, balcony, whatever it might be. And that's sort of where my passion is coming in. So urban agriculture, and maybe tying a little bit, again, out of the story of specifically vertical farming, but urban agriculture comes in many different shapes and forms. And so you got anything from your backyard gardens, balcony gardens, community gardens, urban farms, indoor farms, and even backyard chickens. And I don't know if anybody who's a part of Toronto's pilot project that they let people have 2 chickens where you can have your own eggs, but literally you could have your chickens with your own eggs. You can have eggs every single day. They're yours. They're actually the best eggs you could ever have. And now they're starting to work on some really cool bee programs as well for people to sort of have their own little apiary or buy into a cooperative. So again, many different shapes and forms. And it doesn't mean that you need to have a massive amount of space. You can see there's planters, there's raised beds. In Toronto, if anybody has heard of a place down on Downsview Park, there's a group called Fresh City Farms, and they've just opened, I think, one of the largest urban farm properties in North America that's closest to a metropolitan area, and they actually have different farm spaces for other types of farmers. So again, amazing things happening in and around Toronto, and there's amazing things happening here at Seneca too, that I think maybe Courtney will talk about in a bit. There's also amazing local organizations. So just wanted to bring to light a few of these groups that I've worked with that do amazing work in and around, again, more the GTA. We've got the Toronto Youth Food Policy Council. We've got Food Share that does food baskets at compensated rates for people in lower income communities. We have the Toronto Urban Growers, which is the largest cooperative of agriculture producers and sort of people involved in the ag space in the city. We've got Black Creek Community Farms. It's up near York University that has an amazing program in terms of what they do for food baskets for their community. There's a group called Community Food Centers Canada that has hubs all across Canada. In addition, there's another group called Building Roots that has a 2 shipping container little cold storage place, which is a drop off in Moss Park. And so again, amazing opportunity for them to bring local foods into the community and have a vehicle for delivery, we'll say, or actually distribution. And then the last group is Greenest City. Greenest City works across the city and all sorts of different greening projects, agriculture projects, training, internships, and co-ops. So again, there's lots of resources in and around the city if anybody wants to get into sort of food agriculture farming over the summer season. Now I'm going to talk a little bit, so I'll get technical here, a lot of storytelling. Now I'll get technical. I'll give you a bit of education around what is indoor farming, what is a vertical farm, and some of the key pieces. So in a vertical farm, it comes under the envelope of controlled environment agriculture. There's hydroponics and aquaponics. We're going to talk a little bit about sprouts, microgreens, and leafy greens. We've got multi-tier versus horizontal or vertical tower, and then home grow units. So as you can see, there's all these different kind of forms, ways, shapes, and forms of how people are growing indoors. Many different methodologies, and we're going to try. I'm going to share a little bit about the fundamentals or the foundation as to what that is. So this is section controlled environment agriculture. Us in the industry, we call it CEA. So pretty simple, just to give you the Cole's notes. What do we need to grow? So these are the things we take for granted outdoors. We need soil or substrate. We've got our water and our nutrients, air temperature and movement, and then PAR or photosynthetic active radiation or light or sunlight. And so this is a great slide that sort of compares what we take for granted in nature that grows our crops and how do we have to recreate this perfect environment so we can actually produce crops indoors. As I mentioned, it goes around with some of those fundamental or foundation building blocks of growing food. So substrates. If you ever see something that looks like soil or might not look like soil, the purpose of a substrate is it basically provides a structure for the roots, stability for the plants. It has moisture retention, and most of them are engineered with a specific amount of porosity or density that actually helps to retain just the right amount of water, but not too much. That also supports the ability to have oxygen pockets because plants need to drink. They also need to breathe. in the root zone. And then it gives you something called biological surface area. And biological surface area is just the space in which healthy bacteria will colonize that actually will help to benefit your plants over time, year over year. So you have our substrate sort of starting from the bottom. As you have your substrate, it needs something to get its nutrients. So, in our soils outdoor, people are composting, putting in other things. When you're talking about vertical farming, it needs to be a bit more sterile. You could use a compost tea or something like that if you actually want to get, more organic nutrients. But most traditionally, people are using powdered fertilizer or liquid fertilizer. That means you have to become a bit of a chemist. So when you're becoming a chemist and trying to grow food, you're like, okay, this farming thing, it's just getting really complicated now. So some of the key parameters in terms of water, your water chemistry, you need your temperature, because you don't want to be 0 degrees. You don't want to be 2 degrees. You probably want to be closer to room temperature, because that's what a healthy plant would be in the summer in the soil. You want to understand what your pH is, which your acidity or basicness of your water, and city water comes out at a different pH than than a well water or different water from different municipalities. So just to consider, you have nutrients, macronutrients, and micronutrients. If anybody's ever bought a bag of soil or seen a fertilizer bag, it has 3 numbers on it, and that's N, P, and K, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So those are your primary fertilizer nutrients, or your macronutrients that help to support your plant's growth. The other thing in your water chemistry is you've got particulates, so you may have plant roots and things flowing around. In hydroponics, you have a pump that's recirculating water, so you want to make sure you filter that stuff up, or else you've got an expensive problem. And then obviously any type of volatile organic compounds that may be found in some sort of water, especially well water contamination. So, if you're ever looking to do hydroponics, you've got to do a little bit of work on the water side. When it comes to environmental management, you've got temperature and humidity, temperature, humidity, and composition. And one thing that's very interesting and simple is, how do plants grow? Well, basically, you put the seed in the ground. As a plant is growing, it's drinking nutrients, it's breathing, and it's sweating it out, essentially. So plant is essentially drinking and then sweating. And so if you're doing something that's indoors, you're thinking, okay, well, now my plant is drinking all this water and it's really healthy. Now it's just sweating a lot. So something that's important to understand is there's something called vapor pressure deficit, which is the same as something moving to a place from higher density to lower density. And within that is, if you have a room where you're growing thousands of plants, say this room, and we don't have any type of ventilation or dehumidification, the plants are actually going to basically suffocate themselves, because there'll be so much moisture in the room. So then there's different types of engineering technology that are being brought in terms of either ventilation or desiccant air coolers, evaporative coolers and chillers, and then obviously dehumidification. So whole lot of technology. I'm not here to talk specifically about the tech, but that's just sort of the basis of what, again, plants need on the environmental side. On the lighting side, again, as I said, we take sunlight for granted and plants are growing outdoors. The important thing that you can kind of see here on the graph is that plants actually get excited by different types or specific sort of wavelengths of light. And within the vertical farm industry, we went from blue light to purple light to pink with green to orange to yellow with blue. And now we're at like white light with a little bit of red, because they realize that, plants actually absorb a little bit of a lot of the different spectrums, although certain components in the photosynthesis process excite the plant more. And so how that makes any relativeness, we'll say to chatting with you all here, is that you can actually use light to engineer plants. And so you can biomorph plants by applying certain recipes of light, blasting them with either more intense light or different colors of light at different points in their life cycle. And so you can see on the little chart, I guess, image here, that they were able to sort of showcase how you can have green to red to green-red hybrid by applying different types of light to the plant in these controlled environment chambers. So it's very interesting to think, we're growing food and morphing food now with light instead of looking at GMOs. And not that necessarily that's a better thing or a worse thing. It's just something very interesting looking at technologies or biology's response to technology. Now, some of the other things, and I promise I'm sort of wrapping up on this section, but some of the other things is, as I said, like it comes in all different shapes and sizes. We've got towers, we've got rollers, we have robots. We're working on a project right now with Seneca called Boreal Berries at Seneca. And we've got vision-driven automated like AI hand grabbers, like robotic arms that have a snipping device to harvest strawberries from an indoor strawberry farm. So there's a lot of different pieces of technology that come into, okay, well, farming has really changed. This doesn't look, you ask somebody who thinks about a farm, you think about a guy on a red tractor with a pitchfork. this is your farmers of the future, is people who are literally running a farm with an app that's telling them, hey, you need to check the water, and Dave wants 2 heads of lettuce, so you better go get it out to him. So these are the types of things how technology is now bringing farming closer to cities, closer to a new generation who likes the technology, and actually allowing people to grow more with less, which is really cool. I figured I'd throw a slide in here really quickly about aquaponics to sort of talk about how that cycle works, because in hydroponics, and I forgot to give you this piece before. So hydroponics actually originates from a Greek term, and it's working water, hydros ponos. So hydroponics is the act of growing plants basically with water without soil. And so vertical farming usually uses the technique of hydroponics in order to achieve that kind of cultivation. As mentioned, when it comes to hydroponics, you're usually using a more synthetic fertilizer, whether it's liquid or powder. Now in aquaponics, you integrate your fish. So now you've got your fish, which are basically your farmers. You're feeding your fish are pooping. You're filtering out the large poop from the from the fish, and then you're allowing the particulates that are suspended in the water to flow through something called a bioreactor. The bioreactor is basically where healthy bacteria converts your fish poop into plant food, and you can do it at a rate at which you literally just feed the fish, add absolutely no other nutrients, and then your plants are able to grow in just water. So the cool thing about aquaponics is at the end of the day, you actually have the ability to harvest the fish as well. That helps on the business case in terms of making your operations sustainable. This is a quick picture because now farms can come under one roof. And the key is, how can we do all this and farm in a way that consumes less energy? And so we're working on different ways and new technology is coming out. But this was one of the visions, is how can we do turnkey dynamic net zero farms? And so that would come with different climate cells. And this one, it's got a rotating vertical strawberry system that we're hoping to get a big grant for. As I mentioned, we've got a vertical farm that can grow vegetables and dwarf peppers. So at one point I was growing baby corn, baby tomatoes, baby peppers inside of a vertical farm, which is something very different because a lot of the time you see lettuce. And so again, it's how do you use the fundamentals where you can actually create a really dynamic farm under one roof and do it 365 days of the year. And so again, technology is allowing us to do that. Now I'm going to flip onto the other side real quick. Hopefully you're not all tired of me rambling on and saying all these things, but I hope you find it interesting. But I'm going to flip the script a little bit from the technology side of indoor and vertical farming and sort of talk a little bit about regenerative agriculture. And so regenerative agriculture is basically a continuous process of looking to build soil. Now we talk about sequestering carbon, and I don't know if you've heard I heard the ad the other day of one of the big energy companies, oil and gas. We've got this carbon sucking machine. We've created this machine that's going to suck carbon out of the air. We've come to that point, it's pretty catastrophic, where agriculture is actually one of the biggest pieces that is actually sequestering carbon, because the plants are taking it in and putting it in the roots in the soil a lot faster than we're doing with our trees. So regenerative agriculture is a very important piece to actually having a more sustainable future. And that's why I wanted to highlight it here. And some of the terms under regenerative agriculture you'll hear is permaculture, which is agriculture designed with permanency. So you want permanent agriculture. Biodynamic, things that are working together in symbiosis, where you have chickens and you have crops. So the chickens are going to go and eat, but they're going to eat the weeds of your crops. And so now you've actually got something more dynamic, more ecological. And so all these components are value sets of a new face of agriculture. And I'll give a shout out over to Clearwater Farm, because they're a fantastic place that does practice a lot of these things on their day-to-day, and are supporting young entrepreneurs of how to build soil and business through agriculture. And the reason why I think regenerative farming and agriculture is very important, and if you haven't seen this documentary, it's very cool with Woody Harrelson. It's called Kiss the Ground. And so our industrialized agriculture system is not supporting deep roots. It's supporting a very top layer strata of our topsoil, because it's very intensive when it comes to tilling, when it comes to the seeding and the machinery that's being used. Where if we look at more of a permanent agriculture, regenerative agriculture design, we're not only seeing that the roots are growing much deeper, and the deeper the roots grow, the deeper they push the carbon down into the ground, which means it's a better solution for us. But it's also more dynamic. You can see there's 4 or 5 different crops. There's a small tractor, not a huge implement, not a plane with a sprayer on it. It's looking, perhaps a bit more utopian than real, but the concept is that we can still produce food with a different system, a different protocol. Now let's figure out how we can make it profitable. Well, there's somebody here who has, from Canada, his name is Jean-Martin Fortier from Quebec, and he's one of a number of different guys who are leaders in this space. And they're looking at market farming, which is small scale, high intensity profitable farming agriculture using the regenerative and organic principles. It's also looking at human scale farming where we're not having massive tractors, we're having hand tools, hand machinery, different kinds of things that are having less impact to the soil, less impact to the ecology, but also 70,000 to 140,000 per acre in terms of revenues is pretty good if you think about that running as an operation. So he's paving a way as a trailblazer, showcasing people who are now part of his movement, which are micro farmers and a decentralized but cooperative approach aligned with a similar value set. And so I'd highly advise, I've got one of his books over here if you ever want to check it out afterwards. But what's different about the approach and market farming in general by design, it's usually between a 1 and 10 acre max space that you do for like market farming. You have crop diversity and companionship. So you're looking at multiple different crops that are complementary to each other, that are also rotated as part of the crop rotation and succession. Because perhaps one thing just to say, I should have said it earlier, but corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, are not just the three sisters for a sustenance reason or anything. There's actually a biological reason, is that corn, beans are nitrogen fixing, corn is nitrogen consuming, and squash is a cover. So we have our corn that is creating the bean stalk. The beans are bringing nitrogen into the soil, which the corn needs to grow taller, and the squash is providing ground cover so we don't have weed competition. So the indigenous people have been farming extremely smart for centuries. And so then we start moving and look at, why do we have this whole industrialized agriculture system? It's because they realized we need the North American market wanted to dominate how grains are produced post-war, and it changes the whole system from a regenerative system to an industrialized system. And unfortunately, we've sort of got to incrementally push back because the system as it is isn't really working out. The picture here is a market farm by a guy in the United States. As you can see, it's a lot different in the picture, a whole lot of rows and some really interesting infrastructure. We're actually in the process of trying to work with Seneca on something like this on the King campus and have a little bit of a prototype for some market farming. Another important component in how, obviously the market farm is, what is it? What's the infrastructure to grow? But then it's, how are we getting good food into people's hands? And how are we possibly supporting entrepreneurs who want to do good in agriculture to be able to support themselves or start their project up? One of the really cool things is community supported agriculture, this concept where basically you're a farmer, you have a community, that community is paying you in advance, almost like an investment, sharing in the risk of that year's bounty. And then what you do as the farmer is you produce a weekly food basket and it goes back to the family, almost like a meal kit. And so if you think about this, this is the same kind of system that, a Good Food or Blue Apron or whatever is using, but now you're supporting a local farmer. And usually that local farmer works with other local farmers to put different food into the basket. And again, you get a weekly basket that could support an individual, a couple, a whole family. And it actually creates a shared value relationship where you buy into a CSA program, you're actually probably saving a lot more money than you would at the grocery store, and you're getting fresher food, and you're supporting the local economy. So as a concept, this is a fantastic idea of how you can create, again, a collective buying power that can support a farmer, that instead of them going to the farmer's market, you actually sort of fight against other farmers at the farmer's market because it's a free market. And that's not what you want to see in terms of moving a good food movement forward. So again, something that's quite interesting. And that ties into a really cool program that is out of the Toronto Metropolitan University, where they have a rooftop farm, their rooftop urban farm. And it's a functional farm with applied research. They do some really good data collection as well as operating. It's run by the students for the students. They have a little farmers market that I think they do on Wednesdays or Thursdays. They have students come up to help with the harvesting, help with the seeding, help with the preparation, ties into some of their programs. They have a little farmers market table. And I think that we can do this at Seneca. And I'm happy to be a supporter of it in some way, shape, or form. So what we'd like to, be able to support, and perhaps Courtney's going to talk about it afterwards, is how could we create a student body of Seneca that is so large where you're coming to school every day that you could come and pick up a basket of food and then work with a hospitality program or culinary program to create some cool local meals. So I think that it's a really cool initiative. And I said, we're trying to, as Boreal, as private partner, potentially come and occupy some space up at King campus, get some students engaged as early as this summer. So with that, that's all. I'll stop blabbing, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has it. But thank you very much for your time. And I'm probably over half an hour, so sorry, guys. Does anybody have questions real quick? I know I'll go through things. Maybe just find me at the table later.
You know, we actually had TMU come in. We spoke to them about coming in, talking a little bit about their project and what their findings and techniques were. But hopefully next National Engineering Month, we will have them. And not only that, we'll have by then Seneca's own version of their farms. And so looking forward to that. Thank you, Brendan, again for your presentation. Up next, we have Courtney Hayes. She's an operational specialist at Sustainable Seneca. And she'll be kind of highlighting some projects, interesting projects that's happening around Seneca. So give her a round of applause. Thank you.
How am I gonna follow that? That was like a TED Talk. So good.
Okay, people will look at
Oh, it's so great. Good.
Thank you. I'm a tree person, not a technology person. Okay, so hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Hello. Thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening with us. I know, it's a Sunday and we're getting a little bit late. So thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful for it. And thank you to those for signing in virtually as well. I am so excited to be talking about Seneca sustainability and urban agriculture because there are so many things happening across all of our campuses. And I'm sure you're all aware of, especially after that presentation, of how important it is that we really focus on urban agriculture for the health of the planet and everyone and everything that lives on it. So like you said, my name is Courtney Hayes, and I am the operations specialist in the new Office of Sustainability at Seneca. And my role is pretty intuitive to the name. I work to make sure that all aspects of Seneca operations, so our built environment, our landscapes, what we purchase in procurement, food services, custodial, like really everything in between operates as sustainable as possible. And a big growing part of that, pardon the pun, is urban agriculture. So let's get right into it. So today I will start off with talking about Seneca sustainability and urban agriculture, just to give everyone a bit of a context, as well as talking about the value that Seneca sees in researching and implementing urban agriculture from an educational institution perspective. And then we will get into Seneca's approach, so how we interact with urban agriculture, including some project highlights and how to get involved. And now we will start off with the Seneca context of urban agriculture and sustainability. So Seneca published their sustainability plan for the 2021 to 2026 period, which included the opening of the Office of Sustainability, which was established last year. On the right here, we have our lovely team. We have Don Forster, who's our director, and he spearheads our sustainability leadership. We have Waju, who's responsible for integrating sustainability into our curriculum and our academic offerings. We have Paula, who is there on the right, who's also here. And you're all probably familiar with her already because she's always running around, running sustainability events and communicating our initiatives to the public. And then we have myself in operations, and we have Emily, who is the newest member of our team, who is doing an amazing job at really being the glue that holds us all together, keeping us all organized and helping us with our reporting, which includes our first ever annual sustainability report, which will be published this year. Yeah, woo! Love the energy in the room on a Sunday night too. This is amazing, amazing. So when we say that we're working towards sustainability or we're working towards improving our sustainability performance, we really wanted to make sure it was clear what that really means, right? Sometimes sustainability can be seen as this like globulous kind of vague concept. From my experience, you can even be in a room with sustainability professionals and we ask like, what's the definition of sustainability? And there's like 30 different definitions for the 30 people in the room. So we really wanted to make sure we understood what that meant and we communicated appropriately. So across all of our domains of action and our domains in the office itself, we have these areas of sustainability. And within each one, we have tangible, measurable principles within each areas. And these are really a guiding force to integrating sustainability into all of our actions and decision-making. So for example, within ecology, we have biodiversity, habitat connectivity, soil health and integrity. Within water, we have water demand reduction, effluent management, stormwater management, waste reduction, reuse and circularity, and improving our capacity for recycling. And so we use these principles in everything we do, whether it's, we're making our procurement policy, we're making standards for our vendors, we're assessing the sustainability of a project, or even just verbal communications. We're using these to make sure that everything that we're doing is really true and in a measurable way, aligning with these principles and helping us reach our collective goals. So here is the sustainability plan, super pretty. And it outlines our path forward to reaching our sustainability goals within all of our domains of action. And this is publicly accessible on the website, or if you just Google Sustainability Seneca Plan, you can get it. So hopefully everyone can see in the audience here today this graphic, but this is the action plan within the sustainability plan that outlines all of our objectives across all of our domains and the timelines for each one. So some objectives are, project specific, but some of them are more high level goals that may require multiple avenues and projects to achieve them, like energy demand and emissions reduction plans, for example. But by looking at this list, where do you see some connections to urban agriculture? Just letting everyone marinate in this picture a little bit. But urban agriculture definitely presents opportunities in immersive learning experiences and living lab opportunities in relations to academics. For operations, aspects of urban agriculture and what is required to support our urban agriculture projects, so things that will improve the ecological integrity of our campus, can be integrated into our standards for landscape design and maintenance, for example. It can help us increase the percentage of local and sustainable food, and it can even reduce our Scope 3 emissions from purchasing produce that would otherwise be coming in from God knows where. Yeah, so essentially urban agriculture is seen as both a green solution to the many and complex issues that are presented by our current global food supply chain, but also as a solution to our own environmental performance within Seneca itself. So by offering opportunities for strategic partnerships with other sustainable organizations, adopting innovative technologies, we can enact our sustainability leadership. And for academics and research, there are so many ways that you can look at urban agriculture and kind of attack the issue, whether it's business models or supply chain management, biology, data modeling, a lot of things that are way over my head, but maybe people in this room will be able to take care of for us. But there's many opportunities in academics and research to be applied research projects, case studies in various classes, as well as having our campus act as a living lab for solving issues on our campus, but also like extending it to a global scale. For our environmental performance, it really helps our environmental performance across all principles of sustainability. And then for community, there are a lot of volunteering and employment opportunities within this space, even on campus. But beyond just directly being involved in an urban agriculture project, just knowing the place that you work and go to school is sustainable and has spaces like these can really foster that culture of sustainability and improve our well-being. To be honest, we could do all the energy retrofits that we want, but we can't necessarily see them, right? So having these programs like a really well thought out and engaging waste program, or you can see things growing on campus, really creates that, at least for me, that feeling of sustainability, and definitely improves my my well-being while being able to work here. So now into the meat of the presentation, which is Seneca and urban agriculture and how those two things come together and how you guys can get involved as well. So Seneca approaches urban agriculture from a research and operations perspective. And the main research initiative is the Applied Research Project called the Urban Agriculture Enterprise Support Program, which is a collaboration with Toronto Urban Growers and West Neighborhood House. And this is a one-time 3-year project that offers training, mentorship, and microfinancing for urban farmers. And the knowledge and microfinancing tools developed will also support equity-seeking populations that face barriers to food security and accessing startup capital. And a really cool thing that the students within this program did is they talked to existing and future urban farmers to identify any gaps and identify, what it takes to have a good and successful urban agricultural program or project or organization. And from this, they created a course or certification called, let me make sure I get it correct, the Toronto Urban Farmer Training Program, which is top there on the screen. And it's an 11-week course on starting a farm business from a farm business perspective. And this is just one research channel that's really helping support the different urban farms that we have on campus. And it also creates opportunities for collaborations between Seneca and external urban growers. So as I mentioned before, urban agriculture offers many learning opportunities across really every program, depending on which way you want to attack it. Actually, do we have the environmental project management students here today? I am so blind with my context. Woo! Yeah, say it. So yeah, they're actually doing they're working with me, making my job a lot easier, actually. They're doing an assessment of the rooftops at NEM campus and doing kind of like a market research to find the eligibility for the different roofs across NEM campus for different green roof technologies. So there's really a lot of cool case studies and projects opportunities in this space. But I did want to highlight one program that is specific to urban agriculture, the Sustainable and Local Food Certificate Program. So it applies, gives students applicable knowledge in urban agriculture so they'd be able to start up or support different urban agriculture projects in Canada. It explores sustainable food and farming at each stage of the supply chain while considering its relationships to governments and just society in general. So things like policy, governments, market trends, and things like that. And its end goal is to help to empower students to be able to be involved in this space. And a very exciting, which is why I gave it its own little blurb, thing that we're doing at Seneca right now is we're creating a communications tool between operations and faculty. So it's going to be a two-way communication channel in which, let's say an operations team, like the facilities team is doing an energy and emissions audit. They'll be able to go onto this platform and list the projects that they're doing, the opportunities for students to get involved, the timelines for when they can get involved, and then faculty can reach out and grab it, that opportunity and get involved, and vice versa as well. So if faculty, a certain program had an idea for a project or research project, they can reach out and then make new projects with the operation. So hopefully it's going to support existing ones and get students involved in existing ones, as well as inspire new ones. So operations-wise, my specialty is we focus on urban agriculture in 3 main ways. So the gardens themselves, the ecological supports to help support our different urban agriculture projects and things that would support our ecological integrity on the campus as a whole, as well as management systems to manage our organic waste in a circular way, to have like a circular model on campus. So we really want to take a systems approach to urban agriculture at Seneca campus. We attack it from all 3 sides. So here are some examples of some gardens that we have just at NEM alone. So we have the indoor vertical farm, which is the star of the show, which we'll get into the next slides. We have the Odetto Medicinal Garden, which provides the First Peoples at Seneca access to traditional plants, as well as traditional ways of growing and practices. We have the Odetto Research Farm, and we have the WWF Seed Orchard. So it's a partnership with WWF Canada, in which they provide Paula some native pollinating plants, which we plant with the hopes to harvest the seeds and distribute them to our community in hopes to improve the connectivity for our local pollinating pathways. And we also have a community garden outside in garden plots of Building F, which is planted and managed by SSF. So it's pretty cool. Now, again, onto the star of today's presentation, the indoor vertical farm that is using the Just Vertical technologies. And I wanted to just get us familiar with Just Vertical to start, because they are a really important collaborator and partner with Seneca, and they have a really amazing mission, which is to create a collective of farmers, all without owning a single piece of farmland, which is really cool if we let that marinate in our brains a little bit. So they were founded in 2017, and since they were founded, they have over 1,000 gardens, or like they say on their website, gardeners across North America. And their units are completely customizable and adaptable. So they can be these small units like we have on the right. They can be put into restaurants to have a really cool interactive dining experience. Like if you went to a pizza shop and they had a thing growing basil like right next to your table. And it can also be adapted to institutional or commercial uses. But beyond just being kind of a company and organization for commercial uses, they're also really research focused, particularly on optimizing growing conditions and addressing food insecurity in remote locations like the Canadian North. And the value of these systems are a lot, but to put it simple, the more close you grow your food, the more local something is, the more value and nutrition value that it has, which is something that I embarrassingly learned really recently, is that the more local you are, the more nutrient value something has. So when you're growing it from far away and you're shipping it from around the country or even globe, you're losing nutrients at every step of the way. So you're gonna have access to really nutrient dense foods a lot cheaper than it would be at the grocery store, especially as climate change is wreaking havoc on our global food supply system, not to be a negative Nelly, but for environmental impact, we're going to be reducing our environmental impact across all of our categories while allowing us to engage with where our food comes from and how to grow your own food. So the technology is a hydroponic system, and thank you so much for your presentation before, because you got all the engineering stuff out of the way and everyone was already familiar with it, so I'm not on pressure to speak like an engineer. But so it is a hydroponic system, which is basically growing food without soil in an inert medium, and the medium that we use is peat moss plugs. And all it needs is really simple, just as Mother Nature intended it. All it needs is water, nutrient, and light. So in a standard system, there's a 12-liter water reservoir. You fill and add like these nutrient packets into it every 1 to 2 weeks, depending on what you're growing. And that circulates the water throughout the system with pipes every 30 minutes for 30 seconds. And then the light is provided using LED lights. And they also have a light timer and a dimmer installed. So it's providing just the right amount of lights that you need, and also gives you the opportunity to like set the mood in your living room if you want to, if you have it in your living room, right? So it's really doing everything that you would do if it was outside and you were growing something outside with really no intervention from us. So Just Vertical is a sustainable company at its core. So beyond just having hyper local food, the way in which it's designed is built to be as energy and water efficient as possible, as well as using sustainable materials. For example, they use 75% recycled ABS plastics to make their machines. Also, since water is consistently circulating and being reused, it uses 95% less water demand than traditional growing. And there are literally no emissions from transport or processing, because we're growing our food literally where we're eating it. And specific to our system that we have at Seneca, Just Vertical saves up to 5 million food miles per year for our system, which is considered a Scope 3 emission source for Seneca, which is really great. And for processing side of things for emissions, traditional agriculture generates 12.5 tons of CO2 per acre for lettuce in a traditional system, from fertilizers, harvesting, processing equipment, etc., which is just eliminated in these systems. And another thing that's eliminated is the system does not use pesticides to grow, and the nutrients are both ecologically safe and delivered right to the root. So we're not at risk for any effluents entering our ecosystems and destroying everything. Traditionally, 1 acre of lettuce growing uses about 100 pounds of nitrogen fertilizer in addition to pesticides. And I don't know what the demo of the room is, but we all know that's very bad. It's very bad for the planet, right? But in our system, even at the end of its life, which is in 10 to 15 years, which is awesome, before we have to, have significant upgrades or repair potentially. So in 10 to 15 years, we decide we just want to dump all of the stuff that we have in our system onto the lawn beside it. It would actually help our landscapes because of the concentration everything is, and it's all ecologically safe and beneficial stuff. And as well, in relations to waste, if you have your system in your house and you're growing only what you're actually going to use, you're picking it right when you eat it, and it's just in your house, you're transporting it from really close by to here, you're basically eliminating food waste and packaging waste as well. So particularly in systems where we're providing it to our kitchens at Seneca, we don't have to have all the packaging that it comes in for when it comes in externally, for transporting and making things last longer. We don't have to have any of that packaging. So that's really great that we can eliminate that waste. So Seneca is using the Just Vertical technology to revitalize the shipping containers outside of Odedo by installing this technology and to create a commercial and research hub for urban agriculture. So the first floor, so you can see there, is focused on commercial growing to provide fresh produce for our campus cafeterias. And the upper greenhouse is focusing on research for both Just Vertical and Seneca innovation. And we do want to continue our partnership and our relationship with First Peoples at Seneca, particularly as it's super close to Odedo, by providing an opportunity to select what they want to grow. If they want to grow something and they can have that harvest. And it's not like an obligatory relationship. It's more so really organic and I feel more meaningful. So if they're wanting to grow something, we can grow it for them and they can have it. And I think that's very beautiful. And so the space truly embodies really everything that Seneca stands for. And it's going to be operational this summer. Woo! Yeah, guys. I love this. Love this. So it's also delivering the business case for small scale urban agriculture. So it's going to be producing 10 to 20,000 pounds of produce annually, which we will be providing to our campus cafeterias at a competitive price for our partners, Armark, which will at the same time cover the cost of operations and maintenance of the system. We will also have employment and volunteer opportunities as we will be hiring a full-time urban agriculture staff to help the operations of the site alongside the research teams and volunteers. And then the benefits of the site is also going to be extending past Seneca because the research and business models that we're going to be employing here are going to be able to help foster and further urban agriculture in Canada, as well as fight insecurity, food insecurity, maybe not just normal insecurity. So we did do some infrastructure updates to be able to make sure we have optimal growing conditions and functionality for what we wanted to use it for, as well as durability, making sure it lasts as long as possible, and ease of use for everyone that's operating it. So we installed framing support for the entire structure. We fully insulated the unit, and we'll be covering it with an ABS plastic sheet for that really clean aesthetic look. And we installed new flooring. So we have a 3/4 inch, I think, plywood subfloor. We have a waterproof vinyl floor and a vapor barrier. It's kind of the theme of everything in here. We vapor barriered everything just to make sure there's no issues with, not an engineer, but humidity, question mark. But yeah, we wanted to make sure everything was super safe and durable long-term. We also decided to do a 2-ton HVAC system to allow us to do heating and cooling so we can grow things all year round. And in order to do that, we had to redo our entire electrical system from 50 amp to 100 amp, even though the system is really efficient and we would be able to run it if it on the lower amp. But in order to keep that consistent temperature, and since research is a really important thing in this space, we wanted to have as much control as possible. So in order to keep that same temperature, it would have to be running full blast all the time. And that's not energy efficient. And we want to make sure sustainability is the core of this space. So we did that. For electrical as well, we also moved the lighting and the outlets from the walls to the ceiling to make it ease of use, get it away from the racks, as well as installing permanent ceiling lights. And then for the drainage and intake, so we kept the existing drain to function as a drain. And then we also added a new drain with an L connectivity to the outside. There's a connection to a hose that can allow us to drain water directly from the site right to a stormwater drain. And then we also have an enclosed rolling door system on the right there. So we can open it up for farmers markets in the future for different engagement events, and that cover there is really easy to remove. Oh, also with drainage and intake, we have a spigot on the outside of the machine, the unit now, that has a hard line connectivity to the campus utilities. So then we don't have to have a hose come in and out of the system, because we're super into getting rid of pests and dirt and pathogens, anything like that. So basically now everything that's on the outside stays outside, and everything that's on the inside is only inside stuff. So we're all clean and controlled environments in here. Right, so upstairs we did the same thing for the flooring, and we also installed a 1/4-inch edging and vapor barrier around it. We also sealed off the upper panel. So on the, let me move. On the top right there, those blue panels here, they were once pushed out to allow for air circulation to come in, but we sealed everything up and we installed fans in there, so it has a more consistent intake and circulation throughout the unit. Again, for consistency and temperature, humidity controls and everything, so everything's super sealed. So nothing is coming in or out, and we have complete control over the environment. And we also have a vapor barrier on the left side. So the picture here is not showing it, but on the left side of that photo is where we're going to be putting the just vertical walls. So we have a vapor barrier there because it's the only thing that will be touching the wall itself. And we also needed something for the wall to grab onto. So we have that there. And we also added another drain in the off chance that some disaster happened and someone like tipped over all of the machines or something and there's water all over the floor. We have a drainage hole on the top now that's connected to an eaves trough, which will drain into our rainwater collection system. So we're really trying to make this like a super sustainable, self-sufficient unit as much as possible. So here we have the bottom floor, a beautiful CAD drawing of the bottom floor, which is going to be our commercial space. Let me look. I can see it better. Okay, so what we have here is we have about 12 feet with 6-inch spacing. So that would be the top racks there. And we have 10 feet of 3-inch spacing. So those are the bottom racks there. So we have, what is that, 22 feet of growing medium. We also have that seedling rack that's on the bottom here. With the little wheels in the picture, and that's for propagation and microgreens. We also have fold-up tables on both of our floors, and we have the electrical panel box that is next to the drain, but it's going to be also put inside of a wooden barrier that's vapor sealed, and our master water reservoir is right underneath there, that big black square that's close to the drain as well. So the water from outside from the campus collects water and it goes directly into this master water reservoir, which then circulates with piping throughout this system as well as to upstairs. Right, so another way of looking at this, we can see the LED lights here, and we can also see the electrical panel that's going to be boxed up. And we can just get a better look and feel of what these units really look like. So this is going to be our commercial growing space. So moving to the top floor, the freshwater reservoirs are there on the blue little tubs, and they'll deliver water to all the different growing walls using the piping. So the water comes out from the master reservoir into these two, which then circulates around. And each seedling rack, so each of those individual racks, you can kind of see them separated there, has their own holding tank for water. And the reason why we did this is because we wanted to have the reservoirs be strictly fresh water, so there wouldn't be any stagnant nutrients or anything. And for research purposes, we wanted to be able to control what is being fed into each container. So let's say if we wanted to do something research-wise against how does lettuce grow with this nutrient versus this nutrient, we can control that in these different units. Yeah, so on the second floor, we really wanted to focus on being able to control what and how we grow. And we do that with having varied growing mediums, adaptive spacing, and flexible components. So for varied growing mediums, hopefully we can kind of interpret this, but we have the traditional just vertical racks that are there on the top. We have these ceiling racks for microgreens and propagation. We also have horizontal grow racks, which are these deeper bins, which we'll be able to see better in the next slide, just for a different typology of growing. And we also have a soil growing rack. So we could say, how does this grow in soil versus this typology versus the aquaponic system? So, or hydroponic system. So yeah, that's what we wanted to focus on. Adaptive spacing means that we have the 3-inch spacing in all of them, but we have it built so we can adapt it and make it farther apart or not, whether depending on what we want to grow. And then flexible components means nothing is attached to the wall, nothing is permanent. So at any point we can move stuff around, change something, we can completely upgrade the system and remove stuff, and nothing is permanent. So it's a really adaptive reuse for the space, particularly for research, because we don't know what we're going to research yet until we do it, right? So yeah, that's the second floor. And looking at it another way, here we are. So we have the big reservoirs and the soil rack we can see more clearly, and the horizontal beds we can see more clearly in this as well. And one thing that I did want to point out for this section is that this floor in particular is going to always be evolving and growing depending on what research we're doing in it. And when like new research projects pop up and more research funding pops up, we're going to be constantly expanding what we're doing on this floor. So one example of that is the soil rack. We might be building a wooden box around it, or we're going to call it, well, I want to call it the soil sauna. So we can actually grow mushrooms and whatnot in there. So it's going to constantly grow and evolve, potentially adding, you know, solar roofs and things like that, really making this a hub for research and commercial research in urban agriculture. And we're also thinking of getting more intensive data monitoring systems. There is an app that does really specific data monitoring on a dashboard and stuff. So we want to look into that in the future. So this is a quick pivot from the vertical gardens, but even though this may not directly help our indoor vertical gardens, it is a really big one of our ecological support measures to help the rest of our urban agriculture on campus and just our landscapes on campus. So we have 65 hives around the different Seneca campuses, which produce 5,000 pounds of honey every year, which then we get to have local products for the Seneca community. There we go, they're right there. We have some funds for student support, and we're also supporting the pollinators. So it helps pollination up to 5K kilometers around our campus. So big helps to Don as well. So Don Forster is our director. He's the steward of our bees, and he's the whole reason why we have this operation. So he really is responsible for this. And we also wanted to honor and acknowledge our relationship to First Peoples at Seneca, and then acknowledge the deep connection between sustainability and Indigenous ways of being, knowing, learning, doing. So we have artwork there by First Peoples at Seneca. And finally, closing the loop on our urban agriculture at Seneca and closing their presentation, I love when that happens, is our rocket composter. So at King and NEM campus, we divert our organic waste from our campus cafeterias and our gardens, and we turn it into topsoil for our landscaping. So a big benefit of this obviously is diverting waste from landfill, cost savings from not having to purchase topsoil in some cases, and emissions reduction. And emissions reduction is twofold. It's one, from saving the transport and processing of our organic waste, but also helps with carbon sequestration. So if we are having this kind of topsoil on our landscapes. So on the right there in 2022, we diverted 1,400 kilograms of food waste, which equates to 5.4 metric tons of CO2, given my fancy conversions. So for that, that creates our closed loop system of urban agriculture at Seneca College. I hope it was inspiring in some way. I'm not an engineer, but I hope you got some value out of that. And feel free to contact us anytime. Paula and her team do an amazing job at posting all the things that we're doing in our office all the time on Instagram. So Sustainable Seneca on Instagram. You can reach out to us through our email, as well as check out what we're doing at My Seneca. And also just reach out to your teachers and program coordinators if you're really into urban agriculture, really want to get involved in this space, because like I harped on the whole presentation, there's so many opportunities in this, and especially with our new two-way communication tool, really, and just in general, Seneca has such an appetite for listening to students' ideas. I've only been here for a year, but no idea is too big and too silly. We'll work together to make it happen. So if you want to get involved in this space, no matter what program that you're in, just reach out and we'll try to make it happen for you guys. So thank you so much. Am I fading away? Okay.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Courtney. That was awesome. By show of hands, who's hungry? Yes, okay, that's what I wanted to hear. So what I'm gonna do right now before our last presentation, we're gonna take a 15-minute break. Please grab yourself something to eat, something to drink, and then come back to your table, and then we'll have the last presentation. And then after that, you guys can feel free to eat how much ever you want. But 15 minutes, and then we'll start back up the presentation again. Thank you so much. Matthew, we can just turn it on afterwards. Good. Awesome. Things are going well. Right? They are. Yes. I'm not the one with the.
Hey guys,
Can you just let him know?
Yeah, I think we're on.
Hi, Matthew. We're just gonna take a 15-minute break, have food, and then, yeah, we're just gonna take a 15-minute break. People are just gonna get some food, and then they're just gonna come back to their table. We're just getting them 15 minutes to disperse, because it's they're like, it's been a little.
Okay, so you just, after you talk, you just wanna, it's actually on that screen. Well, you can see it there too. You just wanna hit mute, right? To mute. Well, because I don't want Matt to hear.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you could hear the buzz. I don't know. It might be fine.
Yeah, just leave it. Hi, everyone. Can I get your attention, please? We're just gonna get started on the last presentation. So I'm just gonna give 2 more minutes to those that are up. Please grab your food and then we'll just start. Thank you. Hi, everyone. We're just gonna get started on the last presentation. So for the last speaker, we have Matthew Johnson. And so Matthew founded the M3 Aerial Productions in 2015 and is now the vice president of Volatus Aerospace, a Canadian publicly traded company based in Simcoe, Ontario. Please give a round of applause to Matthew.
hi everybody. Thanks for having me today. I'm sorry I'm not able to make it there in person. I'm joining you from Winnipeg right now. This is where I live, and we're conducting a lot of our research work. I'll tell you a little bit about Volatus Aerospace and I'm going to explain to you about our science experiential aerial research program. That is a really neat program that is running right now across Canada and in multiple provinces, and in partnership with school divisions all across the country. So let's see here. A little bit of background on Volatus. We are relatively recently formed in 2019. Publicly traded company on the TSX. We are comprised of many different drone companies. So over the years, there's been several acquisitions. There's about 16 or 17 companies now that have been brought into Volatus. And they all kind of specialize in different areas of the drone industry. So we do a lot of different things in the drone industry, and that includes equipment sales and manufacturing. We're dealers of drone equipment through our retail partner, Omniview Tech in the Toronto and Mississauga area. We also are manufacturers, and we build various types of equipment. So the image that you see in that picture there, the Volatus Airy Port, is a nesting station for a drone. So that white barrel top basically rotates underneath the bottom half, and there's a drone sitting on a platform under there, and it can be operated remotely from anywhere in the world. And that station next to it is a weather station, and it also has a detect and avoid system on it that allows to have situational awareness of the airspace that can be monitored to allow you to fly beyond visual line of sight. So it's a really neat system that we've been working on for a while. And in addition to manufacturing equipment, we obviously do a lot of work in the drone services. That's how we started. As they mentioned, I started in 2015 with a company in Winnipeg, and drone services and pilot training were what I was dealing with initially, and with the other companies that we all came in together into Volatus. We have a very large drone services, network across Canada and the United States. We have offices in the United Kingdom and Peru, and so we've got services going in all those areas as well. Pilot training is something that we specialize in. We offer ground school training. We offer specialized training on certain types of equipment, LiDAR and ground penetrating radar, and a lot of high-end sorts of equipment that are used, very expensive type of stuff. And then research is another area that we're involved in, and that is my position in the company is vice president in charge of education programs and agriculture programs. I've been involved in doing agricultural research operations with drones since 2016. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And really, this whole presentation is about our research that we're engaged in different in agriculture and in urban forestry. A little bit of my background: I spent 10 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. I was a high school teacher for 5 years, and I started my drone company in 2015. In 2016, I mentioned I became a digital agriculture specialist, starting to use drones initially, trying to help identify where unhealthy areas of crops were for farmers, and then it kind of grew from there into more specific research applications for plot research, small plot research. I've developed several different programs for education. Drones in the Classroom is a professional development program for teachers and school administrators to learn how to use drones as effective teaching tools to reach curricular objectives. We've got youth drone camps that run during the summer and weekends in different areas around North America. Middle years drone program, the My Drone program, is a neat one where we get students learning how, grade 5 to 8 students learning how to collect data. They end up mapping their school and creating a 3D model of their school. It's pretty cool. And the SEER program. Like I mentioned, the science experiential aerial research program, we have a very strong focus on experiential learning. So getting students, whether they're high school or university, could be mainly we're dealing with high schools right now, but there are opportunities. We have partnerships with the University of Winnipeg, and we're working on several other academic partnerships where university students or college students are able to take part in the research activities as well. This picture you're looking at is Seven Oaks School Division in Winnipeg. They were the first school division to take part in the program, and you can see some of the drones that students learned how to fly. They learn indoor drones where they will learn basics of piloting, and then we will teach them how to fly some of these outdoor drones. And then we have a field day activity where all the students will come together and we'll collect data, and we use one of our bigger systems here with specialized sensors that I'll tell you about. So we do some really neat activities in the program. We've got 3 different projects. What you're looking at here is an aerial image of a neighborhood in Winnipeg, and the boxes on the screen are machine learning predictions as to what are elm trees, because the project that we're running is called the Dutch Elm Disease Project, and we're attempting to identify the presence of Dutch elm disease in the urban tree canopy. So our mission for this program is to provide students with instruction to learn how to utilize drone and machine learning technology while conducting academic research activities that may contribute to the development of novel applications of technologies and processes. So we're trying to engage students in a discovery process, in a scientific discovery process, learning how to do real world academic research. And we're getting them out of the classroom and into the field where they learn how to use these disruptive technologies, drones, and machine learning. It is an incredible program. I've received a lot of interest from superintendents and from universities that are really interested in these sorts of activities. It's fairly groundbreaking, I think, in a lot of ways. So the objective here is to discover a new, more efficient and accurate model or process to solve problems that are associated with some sort of localized community sustainability issue. So I mentioned we have 3 programs. I mentioned the first one was the Dutch Elm Disease Project. And in this one, we're collecting aerial multispectral data that correlates to tree health. I'll tell you really the foundation of how that works in a minute. But basically, yes, using a multispectral sensor, you can actually see the health of a tree, even when you can't recognize those factors with your eyes, because sometimes the leaves don't actually look any different or noticeably different on the visible light spectrum. But when you start analyzing them using near infrared light and red edge wavelengths of light, you can actually see their health. So we want to be able to identify the presence of a diseased tree before it can be detected, before the disease can be detected using traditional means, which is a subjective analysis of city crews driving around looking at the trees to see if they see any symptoms of Dutch elm disease. And usually by the time that they see the symptoms, in most cases, it's too late to actually save the tree. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but that's kind of the foundation of our programs is early detection of disease and increasing the effectiveness of that detection. So instead of relying on people and people make mistakes, we're relying more on objective measurements, scientific measurements made with equipment, and doing real objective measurements, which is the key to anything related to science, basically. So we're replacing traditional, I would say, less scientific means of detecting diseases, and or at least we're going about a different way of doing it that I believe is much more efficient. We have to develop that first. So we want to identify elm trees first of all. We have to be able to train an algorithm, a machine learning algorithm, to identify elm trees from a data set, and then to be able to analyze the health specifically to those trees. So a little bit about Dutch elm disease. You've probably seen these signs after a city crew will notice that a tree is diseased. Usually they'll spray them with a little bit of spray paint, and in Winnipeg they use orange, but I'm not sure what they would use in around where you are right now. But a lot of cases it's orange, and basically it's just kind of a mark that the tree needs to be cut down. Unfortunately, there's not much they can do at that point. If they can find the disease early, they're able to inject it with a fungicide that can treat the fungus that is transmitted by the elm bark beetle, and you can actually prevent the disease from spreading and save the tree. So in Winnipeg, the reason why we chose Dutch elm disease is because we have a lot of elm trees here. We've got almost 400,000 elm trees, way more than several other major cities in North America. We've got one of the largest elm tree populations in North America, and we're losing them at an alarming rate. We have a massive program in place to try and manage the loss of the trees. But we're still losing between 6,000 and 9,000 trees every year, which is astounding. In other major cities like Montreal's lost 90% of their elm tree population since the 70s, or just in that small period of time, they ended up having them just completely decimated. And then Toronto has lost around 80% of their elm trees. There's not actually that many in Toronto. But even in that situation, the disease spreads very quickly. So what you're looking at here is the same image from earlier, but it's got some pins marked on it. So the city of Winnipeg has actually surveyed all their trees, all their public trees. They've got an amazing online tool that allows you to go in and find where every public tree is located, the type, the species. They've got all that information. It's incredible. So we've taken that and we've applied it. We teach the students about GIS principles and how all this stuff works, how stitching works, how data processing works. And we get them to this, where basically what you're looking at is red dots, which are not elm trees, and yellow dots, which are elm trees, and the yellow dots with the blue tags are elm trees that have been confirmed to have Dutch elm disease. So we have to filter out the red dots. First of all, we only want the computer algorithm to analyze the elm trees, because we don't want to compare apples to oranges. We want to compare elm trees to elm trees and only deal with a spectrum of health associated with the elm trees. So I mentioned it's about near infrared light. It's all about the near infrared light. Infrared light is emitted from the sun. It bounces off chlorophyll in the leaves, and the more chlorophyll in the leaf, the higher percentage of near infrared light bounces off the leaves. And it is such a high percentage, it's almost like a mirror, right? It's leaves are literally like holding up a mirror above our head on a sunny day and shining visible light back up at a RGB or a regular color camera. Leaves are very similar, like vegetation. And so we can fly over and see, based on the amount of near infrared light that's coming back up to the sensor, we can get an idea of how healthy the plants are. And if you're not looking all the same type of plants, then that can be an issue. So in this image, this is all the plants. This isn't just the elm trees. So you can see grass on people's front yards and on the boulevards, all of that. And even some of their roofs are showing up, just based on, I guess, the way that the near infrared light is reflecting off some of the roofs. Not most of the roofs and the roads and the walkways are absorbing so much of the light that it has been filtered out completely from this image. But yeah, what we want to do is train an algorithm to identify just the elm trees, and then identify the health of just the elm trees. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about here, how like this is an elm tree here and it's not diseased, and this is an elm tree that is diseased, and you can see that it is less healthy. It's on a spectrum of like red, like a stoplight spectrum. Red is bad, and green, dark green, is good, and yellow is kind of in between. The trees that are diseased have at least in this image, some of them anyways, have more yellow in them and some red. So what we gathered from NDVI or gathered from near infrared is data that we process through an algorithm called normalized difference vegetation index. It's very, very commonly used in agricultural research. Here's a better example of that. Healthy trees, healthy tree, really dark, healthy tree here, unhealthy tree. And that's what we want to be able to see in the data that we're looking at. Because sometimes the trees don't look like, I mean, it's kind of sparsely leaved, so it's probably obvious on the ground. But sometimes you may find trees that are diseased and the crews haven't been able to identify them that they are diseased. So we want to be able to get the algorithm. That's what the point of the algorithm is. We have a similar idea applied to the crop disease project. That's one of our other projects where we engage high school students once again in activities that are relative to crop health detection, looking for diseases and looking for other ailments that the plants may have. We want to identify the growth stages of the plants, the different species of the plants. There's many things that we're looking at in this project, and in fact, students will get to do agronomic activities like soil sampling and leaf chlorophyll analysis. They do some really cool stuff in that way. The third project is called the Litter Project, where we're using aerial data. We're collecting in the same way, but of beaches, riparian zones along waterways, and park and community spaces. It can really be anywhere, but those are typically areas where there's the most amount of litter that accumulates, and we want to try and identify where it is. We want to train an algorithm to identify the location of it, the type, classify it, and to try and develop an estimation of mass and the quickest way to clean it up. So like the quickest route. So there's a lot of moving pieces to that one, but that is a really exciting project. So these things together, in order to run these projects, it relies on partnerships where we partner with schools and school divisions or school districts. We have municipal and provincial government partners. We have last December, we received a $500,000 grant from Research Manitoba that is allowing 13 school divisions in Southern Manitoba to take part in the program for the next 3 years. We're looking at other municipal and provincial government partnerships in other provinces to be able to help expand the program in other areas. We also rely on these academic partnerships with, for example, the University of Winnipeg is partnered on the Dutch elm disease project, and there's a university master's student doing their dissertation paper on this project. She's going around and doing ground sampling and ground truthing to correlate the data that we're collecting, and that's what she's doing her dissertation thesis on. It's very exciting. So, and the fact that this program is tied to academic research papers is, to me, it's a very awesome feeling. It's pretty cool. And we also have commercial partners. We have partners that we're working with to help develop our algorithms, and we have partners that are helping us run our agricultural crop plot research testing and stuff like that. And then we also have nonprofit organizations like Manitoba Pulse and Soybean Growers Association and Agriculture in the Classroom Manitoba, and Manitoba Aerospace and Winnipeg Airports Authority and groups like that. So the workflow of the program, it's 6 days. Students get, we spread the program usually. We can do it all in a clump. If we're doing it for a camp, we could do it in a week, or we could spread it over a semester, or even throughout the full academic year. We could do it as a summer camp or whatever. There's many different ways that it can be run, but basically we divide it up into 6 sessions, and we introduce the students to the program, to the technology, mostly to the drone industry. We try to inspire students to get excited about the drone industry as just a disruptive technology, and the amazing opportunities that this industry is providing industry and academia. And then we get into, I mentioned we do GIS work. We teach them how to deal with data, and then we get into machine learning. We spend a whole afternoon on machine learning training, and then we do an operations day training where we teach them how to all the safety requirements for operating drones. We teach them about regulatory requirements and how to plan, how to do site surveys and plan their missions properly. And we do all that stuff indoors. And then we do a field day where we go out and we actually run a full day in the field, data collection, teaching the students how to fly outdoor drones, how to collect ground data, and then how to collect aerial data. And then kind of a wrap up of the program, summary day on the last session. It's very fundable. The program touches on a whole bunch of major funding opportunities. So right now we're in the process. We've got many partners on board with the program. Like I mentioned, some of them are nonprofit, some of them are for-profit companies, and there's a whole bunch of school divisions on there as well. We're in Manitoba and Alberta right now, really looking to be able to roll this out into Ontario and other areas as well. California is another one. So the workflow of the project, we collect data, and we started collecting data as early as 2021 for this particular project, or for the Dutch elm disease project. And we've got data for all these already, and that's what we use to work with the students initially throughout the program, teach them about the data processing component and the data analysis. I mentioned that. So here's just some of the initial, as there's some interest, I think there's a lot of interest in the actual algorithm that we're working on. This is not current. We've made a lot of improvements, but just when you collect data and you put it through a machine learning algorithm, initially the results you get are not always very great. So in this, you can see just with a small amount of data from, I think at that time it was only one flight. We didn't have a lot of training images to train the system, but even with what we had here, we found that 86%, the precision, that's the predictions that the system the model is making predictions. What percentage of the predictions are correct? So 86% precision is pretty good. We want that up around 95 or higher. Recall is the actual number of predictions that are, the actual number of trees that they have found, elm trees. That's what the first initial algorithm is trying to find, is just elm trees, not even the sick ones, just to find the elm trees. So from a mixture of a heterogeneous data set, we were able to find 59% of the elm trees. That's not good enough, but that number has come up a long way with more data and more ground truthing. This is just some examples of some true positives. So true positives are when an algorithm is actually doing what you want. The positive is that it has made a positive prediction saying that, yes, that is an elm tree. And it's true, its prediction is correct. So true positive means that it's saying, yes, it's an elm tree and it's right about that. A false positive is saying that this is an elm tree, but it's wrong. False positives are not a good thing in your data. False negatives are even worse. That's where it's saying it's not an elm tree, and it's not correct about that. So it's basically, they're actually elm trees, but it's saying that they're not. There's other issues as well that we've come across, but these are some of the steps that we've thought that we needed to improve our data quality and improve the model. And so by that, the biggest one that helps with developing machine learning algorithms is more data. Pumping more data through the system will train it way better. And that's what we've done over the last 2 years. We've collected a whole bunch of data last year and have been feeding it. And we intend to continue feeding it, so it will continue to improve. we needed to fly lower initially. The first flights we were flying at were at 400 feet, and we ended up deciding to fly a little bit lower than that initially to train the algorithm. We want to ultimately be able to fly as high as possible to be the most efficient possible to collect as wide of an area as we can. And then flying at different times of year, ultimate goal is to identify the early presence of the disease, but collecting data in the fall is useful when the trees start changing color to be able to see where the differences in trees are. Typically, they'll start to change yellow and red and orange and that sort of thing in the fall. And if you can fly while they're just starting to make that change, it's easier to notice the difference in the trees, at least to train what the what elm trees look like. So right, with enough data quality, we won't need to ground truth. That's just a very high overview of the program. It's an exciting program. I'm very happy to be involved in it, and it's great working with these students. As I left teaching in 2017, it was a couple years where I was not involved in classroom experience, and now that I'm back to it, it feels amazing. Are we taking questions at all at this point?
Anyone has any questions for Matthew? No, I think we're good, Matthew.
Awesome.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks for having me, everybody.
Sorry, what was that, Matthew?
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for all your wise words. Hopefully we're able to use your machine learning technology in the future for agribusiness. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks. Take care.
Awesome. So that's it from us. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to our speakers and our vendors. I just wanted to mention some names. Thank you to Blue, Brandon, Courtney, and Matthew for your presentation. It was very, very informational, and I hope the C team can arrange a field trip very soon to your farm and Clearwaters as well. Thank you to Sustainable Seneca, Paula. Thank you so much for all your help. Thank you, Michael. Yes, you, Michael. From Clearwaters, and thank you to all the C team members who have really worked hard for this event. Thank you to Mary, Michael, Sarah, Lucas, Method, Leo, and Navidita for all your continuous efforts. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Estefania for taking all the photos for the evening. Thank you. And a special thanks to Andrew, Mahipal, and Nagib for all your advice and all your last minute calls. So thank you for that. And thank you to everyone who came on a Sunday night. I know Nolan's a little tired, so when you go back home, you'll get some good rest. And thank you for joining us tonight, making it terrific. Before everyone goes, and you're not allowed to leave until you go, please, I urge you to take some more food back home, right? There's a lot of food, and I really, really want everyone to have a nice meal and walk away with their tummies full. Yes, thank you.
Alumni.
Yes, I won't forget them. And thank you to Seneca alumni for funding and sponsoring this event. The food, the venue, and everything else, the expenses, Seneca alumni took care of it. And so thank you for all their hard work as well. And can I ask some people, whoever's comfortable, we're gonna take a group photo. So please, anyone who's comfortable, we'll just take it outside or here, it doesn't matter. We'll figure that the logistics out. But yeah, thank you again for coming again on a Sunday night and making this event really, really terrific.